Morning guys, we're back out here again on the Mitta Mitta today. Slightly different stretch than the last one. It's sort of mid-morning at the moment and I'm going to start today with a hopper dropper. So there's a few grasshoppers around, about that sort of size, and underneath that I've got a brown unweighted nymph. There's been brown nymphs around about that size, brown mayfly nymphs under the rocks around. That have been producing, so we might try that through a few of the runs and riffles first, and then perhaps later on when the sun gets up a little bit more we might switch over to indicator nymphing or even check nymphing and get a little bit deeper as the sun gets up. Alright, let's get out there. So I'm just trying to do short little drifts here on a fairly short line. As much as possible keep the fly line off the water to reduce the drag. I'm just trying to cover all the likely feeding lanes. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to see the fly and you sort of lose sight of it. It was a little bit tricky, and of course there's only so far that I can wade up here before it gets too deep, so at some point I'm going to have to start casting longer and try the best I can to reduce the drag on the fly. It's obviously a deep pool here where this eddy is forming. And this foam line. Let's see if there's something sitting along the near edge there. Trout will often like to sit along the seam, which is the, just the edge there where the moving water meets the still water. Obviously it's less work for them if they can find a nice spot to sit. Well, they don't have to work too hard in the current, but there's plenty of food coming past for them to take. So it's often a good idea to target those little edges just to see if there's trout sitting in there. Just give that foam fly a little bit of a squeeze. I'll put a little bit of floatant on my leader. I think my leader might be sinking and dragging the hopper down. So I'm just going to put a little bit of floatant on. I don't know how well it'll work on the foam, but also I just want to run some floatant on my tippet. Make sure that the leader, above the hopper at least, is actually going to float, and then I want it to sink obviously down to the nymph. Probably deep nymph this, but there's another pool just down there where I want to try the hopper and the hopper dropper, and then if we don't get anything down there we'll switch over to the nymphs and go deeper. Alright, so there's a beautiful deep pool here with a nice run in at the top. I've got the hopper dropper on at the moment and I'm just going to try the inside edge of that first and some of the riffles. I might actually go and fish the bottom of this pool first, now that I think about it, and work my way back up to the top, because I know I want to fish the hopper dropper down there, but it shallows out at the bottom of the pool, so I might fish that first with the hopper, come and fish this next with the hopper, and then switch over to the nymphs. So there's a nice sort of edge and a drop off into the deep water on the far side here. This is the bottom of that pool. Even in relatively deep water like this, trout will often come up into the top part of the water column when they're actively feeding. So it sometimes pays to fish a nymph up near the surface under a dry fly first, before prospecting deeper with weighted nymphs or streamers. Nothing so far along the inside edge on the hopper dropper, so there's some deep water further out there. Once we change over to the nymphs, we'll fish back through this deeper and see if there's anything sitting down low. Alright guys, I'm going to try something that I haven't tried before today, something totally new, and I'm a complete beginner at it, so expect me to make lots of mistakes. Who knows how I'll go. Anyway, I've got a bead head and a little unweighted nymph as a dropper off it, so they're both brown nymphs like the mayflies that have been getting around in the water. On top of that, I've got about 10 or 12 feet of fluorocarbon, and then I've got some cider tippet. This is a multicoloured cider tippet with the tags hanging off it, and then above that I've got my leader going up to the fly line. So I'm going to try some Euro nymphing and wish me luck. I haven't done it before. I've seen it done on video, so I'm going to try and emulate what I've seen, but as I said, I'm really a beginner at this and I'll probably suck at it. But let's see. Euro nymphing is a style of nymphing that has evolved through competition fishing, and it differs from indicator nymphing in a number of ways. Firstly, it allows you to adjust the depth of the flies more easily without having to move the indicator, so you can follow the depth of the water rather than being stuck with one fixed depth. Even more importantly, it reduces drag by just having thin tippet connected to the weighted flies, so your nymphs get a more natural drift that's less affected by the different currents on the surface. Alright, well I feel like I'm sort of getting the hang of it. I fished my way across that run there. I ended up getting snagged up on the far side on a log or something, submerged in the water there, and I lost my dropper fly, so I might switch over and put another bead on the dropper on this and see how that goes. Try and get a little bit deeper and nymph through this really deep part here, and yeah, see if that helps. So I'll put a heavy one on the point and we'll see how that goes. Alright, so I've put a little tungsten head nymph on the point now. Still got the brass bead head there on the front. That should help us get a little bit deeper. Let's see how we go now. Casting these Euro style rigs is very different from traditional fly casting because you have little or no fly line outside the rod tip. That just creates sag in the line and reduces your connection to the flies. So you're just casting the weight of the nymphs and the leader, and it takes a bit of getting used to. Okay, well, pretty much covered the top of that pool as best as I think I can. There's some slower deep water down here on this bubble line. It's a little bit further out from shore, so I can't really short line nymph it. I might put a little indicator on and just indicate a nymph this stretch before we get down into the shallower water here. There are still a lot of situations where a conventional indicator style rig is more appropriate, particularly in situations like this where you need to fish at greater distance. A Euro rig doesn't work very well for that. Here I get snagged up on the bottom with nymphs, a good sign that I'm getting down deep enough. A bit of a walk back upstream and changing the angle on the line often will unsnag your flies when this happens. Just nymph through the lower portion of this pool, and then we might change back. It looks like there's a long, slow, not quite as deep section here. I know there are fish in this section as well, so I might change back to some sort of a hopper dropper or a dry dropper after I nymph this little section here. I'm just going to shorten up the indicator a little bit for this bit. I think it's not quite as deep, and I was hitting bottom a bit before, so move the indicator down. Alright, let's go for a walk down the river and have a look. There's a big carp sitting just down here in these shallows. The carp often seem to sit in these little shady, still water bits in between the trees where they're out of the main current. I'll cruise around in there. Alright, so I'm just coiling my whole nymph rig with the indicator and the sighter, tippet and everything onto a spool, so that if I want to change back later, I've got it rigged up and I don't have to retie the entire rig. Alright, let's have a little look and see if this carp is still hanging about. I've just put a little woolly bugger on, orange and black. And if anything, I might be able to just get a little bow and arrow cast or something in here. Let's see. Let's see if he's going to cruise in. There's a little light patch down here in the water. Wait and see if he's going to cruise in there. There he is. No, he's cruising away from me at a bit of speed then. I don't know if he saw me and got spooked. But he was moving a bit too fast to put a fly in front of him. Hard to see in here because there's patches of shadow where you can't see anything and little light patches. I'm relying on him to swim into those patches to be able to sight him. There's a couple of carp in a very, very shallow pool just out here. I'm going to try and sneak around and get a shot at them. It's not very easy to get in there. Oh, yep, there's one in the shallows there. He's swimming back out though. Don't know whether he's seen the movement or heard me or something, or if he's just cruising. Gonna be hard to get a shot in here. Well, there's one out in the shallows right out there. Yeah, there's a good fish cruising out there. Alright, we'll get back around here and see if I can get in a cast to him. He's going to be very, very difficult in this super shallow, clear water. But you never know. Don't know if you can see the fish cruising out there. Let's see if I can get a cast here without spooking this fish. It's going to be hard. Detecting takes from carp can be a bit of a challenge, as they're usually quite stationary when they eat a fly. You have to try to watch for their mouths to open and close, or a subtle movement or change in body language. Sometimes it's more instinct than science, knowing when to strike. Yes! Oh, get out of there, get out of there. It's pretty exciting stuff when you finally do manage to hook a carp. They'll almost always be sight fished rather than hooked blind, and often in shallow water like this little pool, which is no more than a foot deep. In water this skinny, the carp will be even more alert than usual. So you have to try to be stealthy, accurate, and you need a bit of luck to go your way too. I hope you guys are seeing this. I'm not sure if that was in frame or not. Turn it around a little bit. Often when you first hook them, carp will do a strong, fast run for cover or deep water. Because this fish was surrounded by shallow water on all sides, he didn't really seem to know what to do. So he flopped around in the middle of the pool for a while. You're not done yet. They're big, powerful fish. But I've got to try and keep him out of those sticks if I can. I was only fishing light trout tippet though, and this was a big, powerful fish. So I had to be careful not to put too much pressure on him, or the tippet would surely pop. I was pretty sure he was going to head for the pile of sticks and branches near the middle of the pool too. So I was gently trying to steer him away from them. But if he really made a concerted effort to get there, I was going to be in trouble. One of the most fraught parts of fighting a large fish on light tippet is trying to bring them to the net. You have less give in the line, and when the fish sees you up close, there's a good chance he'll make a strong lunge away from you in a final attempt to get off. Trying to rush a fish to the net is a great recipe for losing it. He's not done yet. I just had to take my time with this fish and wait until he was ready. He hadn't spent a great deal of energy yet on any big runs, so he still had plenty left in the tank. I remembered a talk that Peter Morse gave recently to the Sydney Fly Rodders meeting about carp, where he talked about using low rod angles to try to turn a carp upside down to subdue them. So I started trying to use the rod angle to bring this fish under control. It worked, and soon the fish was starting to tire. I was getting the upper hand at last. He gave one final lunge towards the sticks in the middle of the pool, and then he was ready to bring to the net. Oh, yes. Whew. Landed him. Oh, he's a big, solid fish, this guy. He is a really big, solid fish. Yeah. Look at that. I'll get him in under the gills. Alright. There he is. That's a pretty decent carp. He'd be he'd be somewhere in the 50s, somewhere in the 50 centimetre mark. Anyway, now normally I practice catch and release with everything I catch, but with carp they're a noxious species in Australia, so we've got to kill them. Kill them and throw them up on the bank, and a fox or something will come and get him. So look, obviously not the target species for today. I'm really targeting trout, but if these opportunities present themselves, then why not? They're good fun. They're a challenging target to catch on fly. They're not easy. They fight really hard. They can give you really, really long, powerful runs. They're very, very spooky fish. So catching one in the absolute shallows like this, sight fishing, what a lot of fun. It's good. Anyway, I'll go and dispatch this guy, and then we'll be back in a sec. Well, that was great fun. All shallow water sight fishing. This is the little shallow pool that I pulled him out of, probably not more than a foot of water. And you know, people think of them as a sort of a rubbish species, carp, but boy, gee, they're a good sport fish. They're challenging to catch. They're not easy. You got to be quite stealthy. You got to work hard for them sometimes. And you know, to have those sort of sight fishing opportunities in real shallow water like that, it's pretty cool. So, you know, if you see them out there, don't turn up your nose at them necessarily. Give them a crack. Put a woolly bugger on, just fish it really, really slow, try and put it in front of them and see if you can come up with one. I can see another one cruising out here now. Just out there. I might go and have a little cast at him. These sort of very slow flowing sections of the river are where the carp seem to like to hang out, as opposed to the trout, who generally like the slightly moving water. Alright, there's a fish cruising right here in front of me. He's facing right towards me at the moment. I'm pretty close. So, I don't know if I'm going to be able to put a fly in front of him without spooking him. Might even just bow and arrow cast to this guy, if I can. Because if I start waving the rod in the air, he's probably going to spook. It's good. It's behind him. Bugger. Fly touched him. There's plenty of them around though. There's some more out further. They're not easy, these fish. A trout has started rising in the middle of this pool here. Nice little round plop of a rise a couple of times. So I think he might be taking mayflies. Usually, so I'm told, with caddis, the takes are more of a slashy sort of take. Whereas when they do that nice, perfect little plop, and nice little round bloop, that's tends to indicate mayflies. So I'll tie on a little dun pattern of some sort. All right, I've put a little dun pattern on. Let's go out and give it a try. Just as I was about to stop, there's a rise over the far side. All right, we'll have a cast over there, over near that tree. Pretty long cast to get over there. In these very slow, still pools like this one, trout have a lot of time to look at your fly and inspect it closely and decide whether it's food or not. That can make them pretty difficult targets. And that proved the case with this fish. I don't seem to want to play, so I'm going to head back upriver towards the car where I started, and yeah, maybe fish up from there. We'll see how we go. I was back at the big deep pool that I'd fished a little earlier on, but this time the shadows were longer on the water, and there were insects starting to buzz around everywhere. The trout that had been dormant in this pool earlier on were now starting to rise and take little bugs off the surface. Yes! Finally, some success on the trout. And on the dry fly too, which is always a bonus. The lower light conditions and the insects hatching made all the difference on this slow deep pool. I was fishing downstream to this particular fish, not for any tactical reason, but because this was the only available angle that I had to get a cast at him. Anyway, fortunately for me, this time it worked. Got a bit of go in him. wet my hands. I'll keep him in the water as much as possible. Okay. Beautiful, beautiful little brown trout. This guy, I saw him rise a couple of times. Oh. Hang on, mate. Have you got rid of the fly now? Yeah, he's got rid of the fly. Oh. He's a feisty little fish. Very slippery. All right, there he is. Beautiful little brownie. I saw him rise a couple of times down there, and he took that little dry done. So I'll get him back in the water. Okay, let's release this fish. There he is. Beautiful little brown trout. Okay. Revive him. Make sure he's got plenty of go in him before we let him go. Alright, he's reviving nicely. This beautiful little fish. Go on, mate. Off you go. There he goes. Cool. Well, that was nice. At least we're on the board now with the trout. So, yeah, just got to keep sort of adapting and changing to the situation. As the shadows are getting a little bit longer on the river now, there's a few to the odd fish starting to rise here or there. So, that's good. Good sign. All right, we'll push on up. All right, well, there's still a fish out jumping in that same spot that I just caught the last fish. So I'm going to have another cast out there. See if we can tempt him. That was the right line. Struck at it while it was skating, so he must be on caddis. Nice fish rising just a little bit further down in the bubble line there. So I've just seen a good fish rising. He's just out here a little bit. I saw him from upstream on the other side, and I've crossed over and come back down. There's just been another little rise there. Hopefully it's the same fish. Oh, rise just there. He rose right in close that time. The time before, when I saw him further up the bank, he was out further midstream. I haven't seen him rise again yet. Oh, a good rise back down that bank. So maybe he's cruising, or it could be a different fish. There's a little rise, tiny little rise out there, midstream. Got a very high bank behind me here, so I've got to try and steeple cast. Oh, he took it. I missed him. Bugger. Might rest this spot for just a second. There's another fish rising just about another 20 metres down. I'm not sure if there is a second fish on this spot. There may be. Whoop, there's a rise. Okay. Let's have a cast at him. Another fish rising in the lane just over the other side there. I'm not sure that it's the same fish. This log was a little bit more precarious than it looks. The water on either side was actually fairly deep. I couldn't see the bottom, and I didn't particularly feel like falling in and filling my waders with water and scaring all the fish off. But the challenge that I had was a very tall bank behind me that limited my ability to backcast, and a fish that was feeding just about on the other side of the river. So climbing out on this log was really the only way I had to try to get a cast across to the fish on the other side. Well, he seems to have shut down that fish. I thought I put some good casts into him, but something swimming over the other side there. I don't know what that is. I'm just going to watch for a little while longer and see if he starts feeding or if anything else comes up. Alright, there's a fish feeding up there. Figure out how I'm going to get a cast to him. Maybe I can cast to him off that same rock, same log. Try something different. Maybe a parachute, little parachute pattern and an emerger on the dropper. Alright, I'm going to try a little parachute pattern, sort of tan and brown with a light tan post. This is one of Phil Burton's flies. Thanks, Phil. Hope it catches me a fish. Let's see. Yes. Oh, far out. Felt him. Took it. And that'll be it for that fish. He's gone. God, I had a lot of casts at him. Finally got him to take. Yeah. I might have been a little too quick with the strike then. Well, that's frustrating. You work so hard for a take and then blow it on the strike. One of those things, I suppose. Perhaps I needed to wait a little, just fraction of a second longer before I struck. I might have pulled it out of his mouth before he had time to turn down properly. Yeah. Alright, keep working. I must say thanks, Phil, for the flies. They certainly did the job. Unfortunately, I wasn't good enough to seal the deal then. I don't know if there's any more rises going on here. It might be a matter of moving back up the river now looking for some more fish. So I'm just going to retie my leader while I'm back here at the car. It's getting a little bit short, this one, and they do get worn out relatively quickly, so it's a good idea to just be very careful with your tippet and leader and retie it when it gets a bit worn or it gets too short. The sun's getting down now, getting ready for the evening rise, so I've tied on a fairly big championship caddis. It's about a size 10 or 12, and I've got a little brown nymph under that. I was fishing a nice little run here.
watching like a hawk for the dry fly indicator to go down, signalling that a fish had taken the nymph. And sure enough, pretty soon, the dry fly went down and I came up tight to a fish.
Dropped him. Had him on for a second. Didn't feel terribly big, but he obviously took the nymph. The caddis went down. Anyway, it's a good sign. I'll keep going.
If you ask just about any fly fisherman what their favourite time of day is to fish the river, I'd wager that almost all of them would say the last hour or so of light. It's the magic hour, when the shadows are now over the whole river, the trout start to lose their inhibitions and come out to feed in earnest. It can also be a maddeningly difficult time to fish too, as it can be quite hard to figure out what kind of food the trout are eating. As the light fades, it gets harder and harder to change flies, at least with my eyes. Trying to thread a 5x tippet through the eye of a size 18 hook in near darkness is a skill that has so far evaded me. There weren't a great amount of trout rising this particular evening, but right on dark, I found a nice fish rising on the far bank, just off a gravel bank in a nice little current. It wasn't an easy cast, as there were some bushes and trees around on the back cast, so I had to try to thread the needle and get the right cast in. Finally, I managed to put it all together and make a decent presentation to this trout. Alright guys, that's it for me today. Slightly frustrating evening rise in the end. I got that carp today and I got the one trout. Had to work hard for them again. There were a couple of opportunities where I hooked fish and missed, or had them take, but didn't quite hook up properly. That's fishing, I guess. Anyway, still enjoyed it, still had a good day, and every day I'm out here, I'm learning more about this fishery and about the style of fishing, so I hope you guys are too. We'll see you next time.